Matt Brown did a commentary, and he, like everybody, was weighing in on Fury and Ngannou, but he had a different belief. And Matt Brown said it wasn't a matter of Francis overperforming or proving that he was a great fighter. It wasn't a matter of a robbery or decision or controversy. Fury was exposed. Not he regressed, not he had an off night. He was exposed. And Matt Brown went on to say that it was for the whole heavyweight division got exposed, which I would understand that concept, right? If you're a king that's already beaten all of you and is ranked number one, gets exposed, I suppose it would trickle down. And Matt Brown went on to finish this statement by saying, they suck. I appreciated that. I appreciated it because it was an angle and a direction on the most talked about topic of our sport at current time, from an angle that was different than everybody else's, which largely had to do with the decision. And that, I must tell you, is a little bit of a weird one for me, to always have to hear about the decision. When somebody tells you they didn't agree with the decision, or moreover, there was multiple judges and they're all in it, it's corrupt and it's dirty. When they then produce for you the score that they had, just for me, this is just a personal statement, that's weird. If you have somebody tell you one judge had it, this was a terrible decision, this is the person, this was a terrible decision, they gave it to Fury. I feel you can stop there, but then you'll have a kind of guy that will go, one judge had it, 100 to 85. You can just turn your head sideways and go, I heard you the first time. I heard you when you said you didn't agree with the decision. Why would you think you would need to go a step further and tell the score? It's pass or fail. There's only two guys, red corner or blue corner. What difference would it make what the score was? And I don't begrudge those people. I'm just sharing with you. For me, that's a little bit weird. Like, I got it from the beginning when you didn't agree with it. Like, if a guy ever wins, but you think he won by a round, for example, but you still think he won, and all the judges agreed with you, they said that the guy won, but then the judges have it's by 9 rounds, there's not a review or a rebuke on that, but it would feel as though there would need to be. I mean, the judge is either right or he's not. It's not in between. It's not, well, he was way not right. Well, he was only a little bit not right. It's like being pregnant. You're not kind of pregnant, and you're not really, really pregnant. You are or you aren't. And I just share with you, I appreciated Brown coming from a different perspective, because attempting to explain that match is very important. And it's very thought-provoking. I mean, it's so thought-provoking to someone like me that goes back to his junior year in high school, 1993, when I observed something called the Ultimate Fighting Championship for the first time, which was a combination of the arts. I was a lifelong wrestler at that time. I had no idea that I possessed a skill, a martial arts skill. Nobody ever told me that. People didn't used to look for your cauliflower ear and then be afraid of you or show you a different respect. None of those things happened. I mean, that's how little we knew. So it's a very compelling thing, the striker versus the grappler. And then what kind of striking versus what kind of grappling. It was a very compelling thing for me. And so when you come to today and you have an MMA guy who's never done this before, does not have immense amounts of training, is not youthful and nearing his prime, he's actually the opposite. Every excuse that is ever given when you don't have the athletic outcome that you wanted, and it's not about what you believed or perceived would happen, it's about what you wanted. As soon as the person you would like to defend offers an excuse, oh, that's it, you run with it. And that's just generally how these things would play out. There was a couple of built-in unique problems To say that Tyson Fury was out of his prime and he wasn't the same guy, that is generally a place where boxing they would go there quickly. They just didn't have the ability because Francis is older than Fury. So to say that Fury had been out for a while, which is a place that Fury went. Fury actually tried to do, he talked about ring rust and he'd been delayed. He talked about that. He tried to get that to catch on. And in a normal atmosphere, it would have been quickly, because they were looking, boy, these excuse and apologies makers, they're looking quickly to find something. The problem was when you juxtapose that about how long Francis has been out. That was the problem. Fury was right, and Fury was telling the truth. Ring rust and delay, like those things happen. Those are factual. For an excuse, it's got to be longer than Francis was out, and it wasn't. Darn it. Okay, what do we do now? And this game just kept playing all the way to we didn't take him serious and he didn't prepare, which Fury himself put the exhaust on that fire by saying, I trained 12 weeks, which is longer than I've ever trained. I never bought into your guys' idea that it was easy. I follow the sport enough to know that's how people get knocked out. So all of a sudden you were left with your typical excuse. And so what do? And Matt Brown has made a suggestion. You understand this wasn't an upset, it was an exposure. He and the rest of them sucked. Interesting. That's very interesting. It would have to be considered. It is very difficult to understand how we got here, because there's not another sport where you could reasonably expect that to happen. That in lies the problem. That is a problem in an agreed upon dialogue, to the extent that people will quickly say, don't say Francis has never done this. MMA has a part of it. He's done it his whole life. They're wrong. They're very, very wrong. They just got to stop. Francis is not with boxing coaches, not at any boxing gym. He has not been boxing. They're just wrong. But there's no other sport, and it wouldn't even matter if it was a team sport. You take the great volleyball teams and you pick a position, you put Francis in, or you put in some athlete that has never done volleyball before competitively, but they practiced, they had it in PE class, like any way that you want to do it. He's never competed in it before. It just wouldn't happen. They wouldn't get that spot. If you were to put him in tennis, if you were to put him in golf, if you were to put him in a position on the basketball court, on the football field, there's nothing that any of you or any of us have done where we could reasonably believe you could change somebody out and have them compete and or beat the best in your craft. But it's the second time we've seen it. Second time in my lifetime, a person with no experience has gone 30 minutes with the best in the world. And Matt Brown could be onto something. He could be onto the fact that they suck. There is definitely, that's a lazy approach, but it's a starting off point. I appreciate that Matt said it. I mean, let's use that as a starting off point. Let's not just go, yeah, Matt's right, and check out. Let's start off there. Do they suck? And if they do, why? And you would very easily come to the conclusion that the best athletes in the world do not go into boxing. The best athletes in the world, particularly the bigger guys, have other opportunities that are easier to do. And whether that's football or basketball, they generally are going to do something that exists within the high schools so that they can play and get some kind of notoriety and then use that to get into college. Like, generally, that's the way it's going to work. That's even what your parents are going to support. That's what your teachers are going to support. You don't really have any way to know, generally speaking, if you would make for a good fighter, because you don't generally have the opportunity to ever try it. There's not a PE class where they're going to expose you to that. There is recess where they throw out basketballs and there's a hoop and you jump around and you start to figure out who's who. There's never been a pair of gloves that you just go put on and you start to see, right? It is one of those interesting things. Like, is that part of what Matt's talking about? We have second-tier athletes. To believe and to accept that we have second-tier athletes, and that would include MMA. Like, I won't deny that. I'm not attempting to put them down. I'm attempting to take a look at and say, what did happen here? Did we take a fantastic athlete? I mean, I stood with Ray Lewis, who was a world champion, but he was also the captain of the team when they won the world championship. Like, it's very relevant. Ray Lewis, it's very relevant. Guys like that don't come in and hand out compliments to some. They just don't. He would defend his own craft. At all times, he would protect his craft. He said that Francis Ngannou is a different animal. That's a quote. He said you could put him in a jersey right now and he could go play football, the professional level. That's interesting. I don't think you can say that about Fury, and I only use it to add to the point, which is just a question. Is Francis just an elite athlete? Did we see an elite athlete against an non-elite athlete who is competing against and beating and the head of an superior athletic field? It's a question. Is that all that it takes? You just got to be a good athlete. Conor is a very good athlete. Is that all that we saw? And people love to do that too. They love to do that with Conor. First off, Floyd said he carried him. Boom. They latched on. Like, you had to latch on. You didn't have a choice but to latch on to the excuse of Floyd. You did not have a choice. You either had to admit that boxing isn't what you thought it was, the sport that you loved and thought that you understood. The best ever just went 30 minutes with a dude that has never done it. You must admit that, or you must have an excuse. So he carried him, boom, you latch onto that. And then you had the other people that go, well, and there's also a noticeable size difference. That was one of the interesting things here. Like the things that you would love to use an excuse, from the I carried him, which Floyd started. Tyson didn't start that, didn't agree to it when somebody handed it to him. All the way to he had a size advantage. Tyson weighed more. All the way to he's out of his prime and he's older. Francis was older. All the way to he had been out for too long. Francis was out longer. Like, you just kept getting shut off. Which is why it does require a level of thought. What happened? How is that able to happen? Is it just a level of athlete? Is that a big part of it? If you take the right athlete, he does not need to be second generation. He does not need to work hard. He does not need to work and persevere. I've heard some people attempt to explain the success of Francis Ngannou and tie it back that he used to work in a sand mine. I have not got the foggiest idea why they would do that. I have not got the foggiest idea. If that were true, what that person really believes, why don't they become a manager and just go recruit from the salt mine? I mean, it's a really weird thing to say. So what did happen? Is it just the power? It's the only thing we've ever heard talked about with Francis. It's the only thing Mike Tyson talked about. It's the only thing Francis's coaches talked about, but it's damn sure not what we saw. We've seen people with huge power before, but they can't push for 30 minutes. They can't stay out there. They can't walk through that kind of adversity. They can't deal with something brand new that they've never done before. I'm just sharing with you. If we're trying to break this down, it's not as simple as he's a better athlete. It's not as simple. He used to shovel sand. It's not like that. There's something more to it. It's more complex. And it does lend towards the side that Brown is talking about. When Matt Brown says these guys suck, I can't come out and defend him and do it with vigor, because I couldn't give him an example. I don't know a boxer. I was 28 years old the first time I met a boxer, the first time I had ever met a man who had been in the ring on a Saturday night and competed, not down at the gym, not a boxer size class, not a heavy bag in their gym, that had actually gone out there and competed under the Queensberry rules. I was 28 years old. I was a professional fighter at 19. I lived at the Olympic Training Center that has a boxing program. I had never met a boxer. Never. Not a kid I went to school with. Had one kid in my whole school, and he was telling people he was at the boxing gym. I don't dispute that. He might have been. He never got in the ring and did it. I went to college. I never met a person that boxed. Never. Never been out in public, never been on the bus, never been on an airplane. I've traveled the world. I have never met, prior to being 28 years old, somebody that boxed. And that is very relevant. If I don't know anybody and I live in that, I live at the Olympic Training Center, which isn't huge, and we all eat together, and I still never met a boxer, you do run into the question of who the hell's doing it. If I don't know, I don't even know one. I'm not talking about a great one or a heavyweight contender. I don't know of one. I don't know anybody that boxes at heavyweight, and that's including now. Met my first boxer at 28. I'm now 46, and I live in this world. I don't know a heavyweight boxer. I haven't met him. We go to local gyms. We don't have heavyweights. We don't have aspiring guys. It is for sure a small field when you think about it in that perspective. But I do know a lot of heavyweights, and I know a lot of heavyweight athletes. I live in a neighborhood of the 8 houses that I can open my door and see left and right. 4 of them have great big guys, and they're athletes, and they're in sports, and it's not boxing. And of course that matters. Of course it matters how many bodies you have in what field. And Matt Brown might have just hit it on the head. Perhaps it doesn't require any further review. It would definitely seem if you're in a sport and you're king, the best, easily, your best, can't for sure deal with a guy who's never done it. And let me just stop you right there. His age should never have to be brought into it. His weight should never have to be brought into it. Where he's from, what his history should never have to be brought into it. If you have the best of your field, the absolute best, and all you know about the other guy is he's never done it, you should not have a split decision. And in any other sport, you wouldn't have a split decision. And the most interesting thing about this is trying to figure out, why did we have a split decision? And nobody's weighed in. Many people have looked for an excuse. They just couldn't find it. They kept running into problems. Darn it. Tyson's too old. Darn it. Francis is older. They just kept running into problems. And it would seem like Matt Brown really sped it up and got right to the final analysis. Perhaps they suck.